This cycle, we've had a Bitcoin all-time high. We've just recently had an Ethereum all-time high. If you look at altcoins, they're unfortunately still getting wrecked. And if we look at sentiment over the last few days, it's a pure panic in the space. So today we're going to take a look at what are we going to see in the next few months. Are we still going according to plan, or has this all changed? Now, if you are new to the channel, make sure you subscribe, hit the like button, and let's talk about it. First and foremost, Bitcoin at the time of me recording this video is at 110,000 roughly, and it seems like it's pure panic everywhere you look. If you go online, you're going to see that, people are absolutely freaking out, calling for the end of this bull market. Now, let me just remind you where we currently are and what typically happens in the last cycles that we've seen. But first, Bitcoin is going to dip during bull markets. We've seen this time and time again over the last few months. If you look at the current dip, we are, roughly at 11%. If you look at the dip we had in June, well, again, you can see that from the top of May all the way to the bottom of June here, we dipped another 12%. If we go to another dip, well, back at the top of January all the way to the low of April, it dipped 31%. This is, Bitcoin dipping 31% in the matter of 4 months. Obviously, this was much early in the cycle, but ultimately it still dipped 31% and then made new all-time highs. If we go to another level here back in, March of 2024, we had another very long period of time where Bitcoin did dip as much as 33%. And, continued onwards after the fact. Now, of course, those dips were much earlier in the cycle. Now we are getting towards the end of the cycle. But what I want to share with you guys here is based on the 2017 and 2021 bull markets, how those cycles shaped up. We can have a look at Bitcoin's ROI since cycle low for those two different bull markets. And as we can see, in blue here, we have the 2017 bull market. In green, we have the 2021 bull market. And in black, we have the current cycle we are in. So just to show you exactly where, we are currently, we're not in this last phase of the market based on previous two cycles. So we are in this August range right now. And as we've alluded to several times before, there are possible dips in the months of September. You kind of see a dip at the beginning of the month of September. Back in 2021, we can look at Bitcoin in terms of price as well. And you do see the similar thing in 2017. But after that, there is another, upside or rally to Bitcoin in Q4 eventually. So again, we're not in Q4 and September is right around the corner, which again suggests that we may see something very similar to those previous two cycles. Now, if we go back to Bitcoin's chart and you look at those different September months, so in 2017 and in 2021, which are both the years after the halving and after an election, if we look at those 2 years in question and we look at Bitcoin's price, well, in 2021, if you look at September, it's right over here where, we have actually a massive dip even before September. But ultimately speaking, if you look at the month of September, Bitcoin goes down 24%. So no, we're not in September. Bitcoin's down 11%. Is it going to go as deep as 24%? Obviously, nobody has a crystal ball, but we can see that back in September of 2021, there was a 21% dip on Bitcoin, and then it rallied to new all-time highs just in November. So again, that is something to take with a grain of salt. And if you go all the way back to, 2017, very, very much similar in the fact that in September, we had a pullback right over here. Bitcoin fell, roughly speaking, 40% and then made new all-time highs in December. So again, we are currently seeing a dip of 11%. Yes, Bitcoin is, not doing so well over the last 3 weeks. We're right around September timeframe. Are these bull market support bands, which are the 20-week moving average or the 21 exponential moving average? Is that going to act as support as it's done, time and time again? We're going to have to wait and see. But for me right now, there's panic in the space. Sentiment is very low. And I'm going to show you what happened in 2017 and 2021 for those sentiments, because it kind of just, to me, it looks like the exact same thing. So if you look at the Fear and Greed Index back in September of 2021, we can actually see that in September of 2021, the Fear and Greed Index was at 25. This is towards the middle parts of September, or towards the end around September 25th. And just, a month before that, the Fear and Greed Index was at 73. So people are all excited in August, and then towards, the middle of September, they get absolutely, destroyed. They're not happy anymore. The sentiment is completely bearish. And then boom, by the end of, November or even December, in the case of 2017, we have new all-time highs. So you see these massive bounces from greed to fear to greed in the matter of 3 months. That is, again, something that we could potentially see now. They don't have 2017 on this chart, likely because there wasn't such a thing as fear and greed back then. But obviously, you get the idea that people, as soon as you see, a dip of 10% on Bitcoin, it's a massive move. But we've seen that time and time again. And it's actually coinciding with seasonality as we're just around the corner to September. So that's another thing to keep an eye out. And if you look at, historically speaking, those, returns in the month of September, right now for Bitcoin, if we take a look at 2017, we had minus 7.5% for Bitcoin in September. And then you had a crazy last 3 months to the year. Now, if you look at 2021, which is obviously a little bit more representative of where we are right now, because 2017 is still very early in Bitcoin. And then if you look at 2021, we had, a down month for September, 7% again. And in October, rallied to all-time highs with 40%. And then soon after that, it was, the downfall into the 2022 bear market. So this is potentially what we could be seeing. We still have about a week left in August. So potentially August ends up flat. September continues down. And then we see a very good rally in the month of October. And then who knows if that is delayed into November or December. But ultimately speaking, that is what I am still going with right now for Bitcoin. And you have to understand that if you think Bitcoin is going to go down in September, well, Ethereum is likely going to do the same, and altcoins are likely going to do the same. It's not that, Ethereum is going to go through the roof because Bitcoin's going down. It is all going to follow Bitcoin. But in my opinion, because ETH just broke all-time highs, we are going to be able to go further should Bitcoin rally into October, November, or December, because that resistance that we had on ETH at 4,800 is now gone, and that allows it to potentially go higher. Now, of course, there's a lot of potential, a lot of speculation here, but that's kind of my theory on this. And at that time, I do think altcoins will follow suit. Now, if we look at another thing driving the markets right now and some of the sentiment that we're seeing, interest rate cuts in September. If you look at the current odds right now, they are still at 84%, and 84% of a 0.25 point cut, and there's 15% chance of no cuts happening, and people are still freaking out about no cuts in September, although you do have to keep in mind that we do have economic data coming out this week. On Thursday, we're going to have jobless claims. As we know, the Fed has kind of shifted focus to the labor markets, so that's going to be an important number. They also have the GDP first revision coming out for Q2. And then on Friday, we're going to have the PCE data, which is the inflation that the Fed also monitors. So those are obviously key data points that are going to impact what's going to happen in September, whether or not the Fed still favors an interest rate cut. And if we look at what Truthflation is showing for the US inflation right now, based on their data, they have it here at 2.08, which is indicating that inflation isn't all that bad. And the Fed just over the last week has basically said that they were going to focus more on the balance of labor markets and inflation. And as we all know, if the inflation isn't all that bad and the labor market is suffering, then the Fed can go ahead and cut rates without having too much of a worry. but that is what we're waiting for in September. Now, if we switch gears and we talk about Ethereum, well, Ethereum just broke all-time highs, which is awesome to see. And as we can see right now, it is dipping quite heavily after breaking the all-time high. So the all-time high is right around a 49.50. Over the weekend, Ethereum was pumping, whales were buying Ethereum, and that is, a story for another day. But 49.50 around is the all-time high for ETH now. Now, since that move, we've seen quite a bit of a dip on ETH, but it is currently an 11 to 12% dip, which is, in my opinion, okay, because again, we've seen this time and time again. If we go back to the previous months, and if we go to the previous bull market in 2021, in September, again, we're not in September, but we're currently seeing the dip of September potentially. ETH did dip about 33%. And could you imagine everybody that was saying, ETH is done, it's over, and then it just rallied to new all-time highs. So that's in 2021, and we can go ahead and do the same thing with Ethereum back in 2017. As we can see, in the month of August, it reached about $400, and just by, mid-September, it was down 47%. Now, of course, the magnitude here, the prices are much different than what we're talking about right now. But in terms of percentages, we can see, some dips on ETH, and we've seen this time and time again. So again, to freak out on these prices as ETH has just broken an all-time high, in my opinion, is quite ridiculous, because just, last week, before ETH was at 4,300 and before it went to new all-time highs, people were probably excited to buy it at those prices. And now, since it's falling, having a big red candle, people are freaking out and wanting to sell. But, just a few days ago, people were happy to buy at this price because they were thinking ETH was going at 5,000, 6,000, 7,000, whatever the case may be. And although that may be a prediction that comes true in later Q4, right now, this is what we're seeing, and that's why the sentiment is so bearish. And I also want to point out that, when we had the Bitcoin all-time high, if we look at what exactly happened here, we had the 2021 all-time high right around $69,000 for Bitcoin. And back in March of 2024, when Bitcoin was actually breaking that all-time high, this is where it dipped 30 or so % in about 4 months. So again, ETH just broke all-time highs. I don't think it's going to retrace for 4 months, but ultimately speaking, it broke all-time highs. It's also aligning with seasonality in September that usually has a down market for crypto, and it's bringing that dip opportunity for the last leg of the rally. And that is, again, the thesis here that I am continuing to believe at this time for Ethereum. And if you look at altcoins, unfortunately, because the market is just not ready for altcoins, everything is still going down. Well, you can see that ETH versus altcoins is, been down about 50% since April, ever since ETH has decided to go on an absolute tear because it's Ethereum season. We're down 52% from altcoins to ETH. But as ETH is dipping right now, altcoins aren't dipping as much, which is why you see this green candle here. But if we do the same thing for Bitcoin and look at where altcoins rank among Bitcoin, well, we're not at the lows just yet. And who knows if we are going to get to the lows in September. But if we do, expect more downside to altcoins. And right now we are still in an Ethereum season, in my opinion. And you can also monitor the ETH Bitcoin ratio, because ultimately speaking, if we do have, a correction in September, well, Bitcoin is likely going to gain more dominance over Ethereum. Bitcoin dominance is likely going to go up. We're going to have some consolidation here for ETH, Bitcoin, or even, a little pullback downwards before the next leg up, because we've literally been just going up here for the last few months, and there is going to be a point in time where this relationship kind of consolidates like it did in the month of May all the way through June. That little period of consolidation is what is needed for the next move up on ETH Bitcoin, and that is likely going to have a good impact on altcoins eventually when that liquidity rotates into some of those altcoins. And last but not least, we also know that institutions are, still crazy buying Ethereum. So we have here BitMine now owning 1.7 million ETH, which is worth 7.75 billion. We have SharpLink with 740,000 ETH, with, it being worth 3.35 billion, which is crazy numbers. And all of these companies, guess what, are still buying ETH. You can look at this website back on August 22nd. Bitmine bought almost 200,000 ETH, which is, worth millions and millions of dollars. And if we go take a look at the price of ETH on August 22nd, well, we can see that it is during this candle here where ETH was anywhere from 4,200 all the way to 4,860, and Bitmine bought 200,000 ETH on that day. So again, I mean, if companies like that are just spending billions of dollars to buy ETH at these levels, do you think that they don't think the ETH is going to go up or the market's going to go up? That is what I will leave you guys on. Again, I'm not panicking. I think that we still have, positivity in Q4. Let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. Of course, altcoins right now are still bleeding. We're monitoring everything and we are in the same boat as you guys. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, and I'll catch you guys in my next video. Peace.